Hello, and welcome to Regrets I've Had a Few. I'm Paul Hunter, Artistic Director of Told by an Idiot, and this is a podcast where I talk to friends and colleagues delving into what made them the person they are today. Hello, and welcome. My guest this month is an actor equally at home on stage and screen, from a plethora of acclaimed Shakespearean roles, including Romeo and Pericles, to highly successful film and TV work, including How to Get Away with Murder. But most importantly, he's a die-hard Aston Villa fan. Welcome, Alfred Enoch.
Thank you very much, Paul. Up the Villa.
Well, indeed, we will come to the Villa throughout this podcast at various points, given the importance of that subject to both of us. But thank you for joining us, Alfie. The first thing I'll do is what I always do, is to take my guests back to their first theatrical experience, the first thing they remember seeing in a live theatre context, whether that's at school or with the family. Can you remember what that might be?
Yeah, it was with the family. It was Henry V at the Globe. My dad played the King of France in the opening season of the Globe, and the first show they did was Henry V. And the building was new, and there was all that kind of excitement around it. Or at least it was exciting for me as something like an 8-year-old, because my dad was telling me all about it. They were hammering wooden pegs into the stage with the little messages on them and things like that. So there was always all this ritual around it. I was interested in history, so he was telling me all about it. So by the time I got to the theatre, I was already massively sort of invested and excited by just being there in this kind of strange mock Elizabethan building. And the play was Henry V, and Mark Rylance played Henry V. My dad was the King of France, Erpingham, and he did one of the chorus speeches. And my wallpaper at home, at my parents' house, is still painted blue, because I decided, in honor of him, I wanted it painted blue, and I wanted fleur-de-lis in the corners. My mum just sort of got an arbitrary floral pattern, so I was disappointed about that at the time. Still, can't have them all.
Well, that's obviously we'll come to this, but that brings us almost full circle to us, obviously very recently, meeting and performing together in Henry V. And how old were you when you saw your father in the play?
I was 8, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, I stood in the groundlings, and
Wow.
it was just, and I think it's certainly the first play I remember seeing, first time I saw him. It was just amazing. There was such a strangeness to it, because all those early productions, they were sort of working with original practices.
Yeah.
So sort of young men played women, and it had this kind of fascination for me, because it really did feel like going back in time, and just sort of standing in the yard with all these, hundreds of other people standing there. That people must have opened a little corridor to me, because I've seen. Yeah.
Well, I'd also look at watching your father live for the first time. Had you seen your father, William?
Yeah.
Have you seen him on screen before the play, or?
I had, yes, I had seen him on screen before. I think, again, the chronology is a bit muddy.
Yeah, but it must have been very different seeing him somewhere like that, such an iconic and atmospheric space.
Oh, it was incredible. I think that's the thing that kind of really hooked me. I mean, my kind of memory of my childhood, as far as my dad's career went, I think things had sort of reached a bit of a slowdown, and he was all right with that. So he'd have the odd job, but my prevailing memory is him just sitting at home, having a nap in the afternoons and reading in the morning. So I think I already thought that looks like a good job. But then when I saw him up there, that was, yeah. I mean, at 8 years old, you sort of see that it's magic. So that that's had a kind of indelible impact on.
I suppose I think of friends who grew up in a kind of theatrical background, or parents were actors, and I often wonder about this. Was it an inevitable pull for you following seeing this performance, or was it something you resisted? How did that journey happen from obviously, being the son of an actor?
Yes, to be honest, I don't remember ever thinking otherwise. I think I always had the idea, I want to do that. And probably that's just started in the way that, kids do, right? The sort of imitation. You just say, "Oh, my dad's an actor. I want to be an
Yeah.
actor." And in terms of seeing his other stuff, he had been in lots of he was in The Great
Yeah.
Escape and had done lots of sort of 50s and 60s war films and stuff. So they were sort of on every like summer holiday, Easter holiday. So I would watch him or watch films with people that he had worked with, and he'd be like, "Oh, Bob Shaw, and we did this, that, or the other." So it sort of always held this fascination for me. And truly, I remember my memory of it is that I wanted to be an actor even before I saw that Henry V. And so when I saw that, it sort of kicked up another level. So then my dad, I sort of badgered him to teach me a sonnet, because I was showing an interest in all things Shakespearean at the time. So he taught me this sonnet, and I performed it as part of the kind of celebrations with Shakespeare's birthday. They got actors to surprise people who were on a walking tour with a sonnet at every, I don't know, 500 meters or something. And so that was the first thing I ever performed. So yeah, it did really kind of feel, I don't know about inevitable. That sounds a bit grand, doesn't it? But I never remember wanting to do anything other. And I was so fortunate because I had that, I suppose I had that interest nurtured from a very early age. So that was a gift.
And also, I suppose, Alfie, not inevitably, people may remember you when you were younger as a performer because the opportunity to act professionally came fairly soon. How old were you when you were auditioning around the Harry Potter series?
So I was 11 when I started doing that. So I must have been about 10, 11.
Wow.
And again, that sort of happened very, very fortunately. A casting team came to my school and said, we're auditioning for these films that we're making. And the first book had been like an amazing success.
Yeah.
Obviously, and was sort of among all my friends. So we'd all read it, and we'd maybe read the second one had come out, and everyone was thrilled to get a chance to audition for this. And so pretty much everyone in my year and the year above auditioned, which was the ages they wanted people to audition for. But I didn't. Yeah, not for being a contrarian, but though I am. But I didn't want to. I think I didn't want to do it and not get it, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I think for me, there were already some kind of stakes involved because I knew I wanted to be an actor. I already had this was sort of a part of my identity in some kind of way. That was something I really wanted. And I didn't want to audition and be told I wasn't good enough, basically. But I had kind of other reasons. There was, I knew the books and I thought, well, there's only one black character and he's older. And so there was a bit of a question of like, is there a place for me in these things? But to be honest, probably at that age, the deeper thing was that I didn't want to get a big no. So I didn't audition, but I was doing a play, which with the NYMT, the National Youth Music Theatre.
Oh, yes.
Strangely enough, had started at the Globe. It was a play about child actors in Shakespeare's time. And they had come to my school and auditioned kids, and I ended up doing that. And so someone from the casting team saw me in that because we then did a little tour, and then they asked me to audition. So I auditioned, and that's how I ended up doing Harry Potter for 10 years from
Wow.
21. Yeah.
So it's interesting that in a way, not that they kind of found you in a sense after you'd sort of said, after you'd obviously turned them down, Alfie, they were, we'll have to pursue this guy for sure.
This is the big secret, Paul, I think.
Exactly.
You say no.
With our listeners. But obviously that then formed a huge part of your teenage life, I assume. I mean,
yeah.
How often were you filming the films? What was the gap in between them?
Yeah, it was, goodness, I'd be hard pressed to remember in terms of gaps, but I remember the first film. I remember this because my dad was so shocked. I think I shot something like 60 days.
Wow.
And he said, we used to do whole films in that time.
Yeah, exactly.
2 films in that time. What are they doing? But that was the scale of it, and I kind of had no concept of anything other, but you could see the thing, it's a 200 million pound movie, whatever it is, so they built these extraordinary sets, and it was all at Leavesden Studios, which was totally taken over by Harry Potter. We shot on locations, so it was quite periodic, because obviously I was only in a kind of small chunk of the story, really,
Yeah.
and had a tiny part. And I think that was the thing my dad couldn't get his head around. He's like, "You've only got one line. What are you doing there every other day?" But it was, because the shooting schedule was so long, there were gaps in that period. So there'd be sort of intense times, and then there'd be a gap, which was really useful for me, because, as it went on, I was at school, and it meant I didn't have to hand in my homework, basically. So when I knew I'd be shooting, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, no, I think I'm not going to be there, so I'll get it." And, "Oh, you can get it to me after that." I was like, "Yeah, no, I think I'm in the next day," and I knew I wouldn't be, and so I would just try and hope the teacher forgot about it or something. So that was handy.
But when you eventually, obviously, you go through that, I imagine, rather extraordinary experience, and you're now very much on where you are an actor, of course. What did you then think? Did you consider drama school, or did you think I'm going to go to university and just keep working? What was your thinking then?
I like that, by the way, Paul. Very, very much an actor.
Yes, of course.
I'll take that. Yes, I'm like, that was a bit of a strange one, actually. So I went to uni, and again, I think probably just very unimaginatively, was just trying to follow in my dad's footsteps. He went to uni, and he went to Oxford. And I always just had this, I don't even know how conscious this was, but at some level, I just thought, I'll do what he did. So I went to Oxford and did a languages degree, knowing that I wanted to be an actor, knowing that there was no kind of great plan. And sometimes people say, "Oh, that's good to have a backup." And yeah, okay, that might be true, but that I wasn't really thinking of it in those terms either. I suppose I had this sort of sense of a path before me, which I was following, maybe overly literally. But
were you acting a lot at university then, Alfie?
So not as much as I would have liked. I have a lot of friends from that time, many of whom are actors or in the industry in one way or another now, who did sort of an amazing amount of plays. I had one friend who did something more like 21 plays or something in 3 years, and he did PPE. I mean, just incredible. And he's a wonderful actor. But I didn't do so much. I was I was a bit timid, because I was still filming Harry Potter. So I didn't. I felt like I couldn't. I felt like I couldn't go and audition for something and say, "But I might not be available when it's actually on, because I may or may not be filming a multi-million-pound movie." I just thought that wouldn't be a very good look. So I didn't do as much in the first couple of years. I did the odd bit here and then when I knew I had a gap in filming. But then in my last year, I'd finished. The films had finished by then, and I sort of threw myself in and did a lot of plays. But when it was coming to the end, a lot of my friends from drama at uni were applying to drama school. People in years above had gone on to drama school, or applying, or whatever. And I remember being terrified by this prospect, Paul. Because again, it was the same thing. And probably there's a bit of that in the plays that I didn't do in the first couple of years at uni. I didn't want to get rejected. I was terrified at the thought of it. I thought, what happens? I've wanted to do this all my life, and here I am. I've got an agent. What if I audition and I don't get in? But I was kind of spared. Well, maybe let off the hook is a better expression. By the fact that my dad had really strong opinions about this, and he said to me, "Don't go to drama school. Absolutely, don't go to drama school." He had directed at Lambda in the 70s.
Okay.
And had, for I know, a good experience there, and taught lots of fantastic people. Jim Broadbent once came up to me on the set of Harry Potter and said, "You're William Russell's son, aren't you?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I am." You know, that's all like glowing inside. And he said, "He taught me at Lambda. He was wonderful. Send him my regards." You know, that was like for me.
That's very cool,
isn't it? That was like genuinely like the best of many good things that happened.
particularly. But I don't know. I don't know what you feel, but Jim Broadbent is one of my favorite actors of all time. So that's very cool.
Right? That's exactly. I mean, he is exceptional, and just he was that was such a generous thing to do, you know. And also,
Yeah,
I had no idea how he knew, you know, because we have I suppose my dad was Russell Enoch for a period of his career, but
yeah.
mostly it was William Russell. So I don't know how he made that connection, but that was so generous. And you know, as you say,
Yeah.
he's an extraordinary actor. So
So you followed your father's advice.
so I followed his advice. Yeah, I was, you know, I availed myself as the kind of get out of joke free card because, as I say, my insecurity was probably was churning away in the background. But he was very stringent on that because I had I'd sort of signed up to do drama GCSE at school because I thought, you know,
Yeah.
I want to be an actor. I like acting. Why am I not going to do that? And he told me not to do it. He made me give
Oh,
up drama GCSE. So you know, I never quite got to the bottom. I think it was just about, I don't know, just the way he had seen acting taught, and it wasn't his experience because he came up through, you know, he went to Oxford and then went into weekly rep.
yes, of course.
So he had a totally different kind of context in his kind.
And in a sense, for your dad's generation, and in a way, that weekly rep was almost the training, wasn't it? Really?
Well, exactly, and you know, in a way not in a way, but that was that. I suppose looking back at it, that was my problem because I didn't have a weekly rep to go into, you know. So
So what did you go into? Fringe productions or what?
yeah, I did. I finished uni and I already had an agent thanks to Harry Potter, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna go out there and work. And we took a student show up to Edinburgh, which did quite well. We were flying for hours on the mile, but it worked. We managed to, you know, sell out the show, and then I got a little telly, a pilot, and then I got a French show at the Old Red Lion, which was my
Great venue.
professional stage show, which is amazing, isn't it? Those two sides. It's a lovely,
Yeah, it's great.
and you could hear the football downstairs. We would have Sunday, and that was a bit. Half the time when we had only, you know, that didn't sell as well. Sometimes we had 4 people in the audience, and I thought, well, I'd rather be downstairs watching the football. Summon the courage. But that was a kind of extraordinary thing. I was, you know, paid 100 quid in cash in the cafe next door a week.
Yeah, that first theatre payment is an exciting moment, isn't it?
Well, yeah, especially over a full English. Especially back then, actually, the full English didn't take so much of a
No, that's
the £100. So that was good. That, you know, that was.
So I'm obviously interested because we've just worked together on Henry V, and Shakespeare is obviously a real passion of yours. And what was the first professional Shakespeare you did?
Oh, Timon of Athens.
Wow.
Yeah, it was Timon of Athens. So that was a little bit after I did that Fringe show. And quite sort of as I came off that, I got a couple of jobs at the National. And, you know, there was I thinking to myself, I'm set, you know. I'm working at the National. This is perfect. And it was a production of Timon of Athens, directed by Nick Heitner, with Simon Russell Beale playing Timon. He was incredible. And I think, you know, I don't know how you feel about this, Paul, but I always struggle to get a sense of something from the inside, right? But I just think that production was really good. It was contemporary. It was a sort of financial crash parable, right? So this was 2012,
Yeah.
and it was sort of one man's credit crunch, you know. Timon learns just pays out too much money, and then his ships don't come in. So Simon was incredible. It was all sort of contemporary and recognizable environments in London. So the first scene, it was like he was a sort of benefactor unveiling a new wing at the National Gallery.
Wow.
It was really well thought through. There were scenes at the Houses of Parliament, Soho House. It was all very that recognizable kind of urban liberal metropolitan elite. And
And Simon Russell was incredible. And this was one of the things that was amazing about it. I had a part which in the folio doesn't even have a name. He's called Servant. And he has a soliloquy. So I was there doing my first,
Wow.
Shakespearean professional job. And I had bits and bobs here and there. And there's one scene where the character sent out to go and ask for money, a loan from someone times treated very generously in the past, gets a big no. And I got to turn out at the end of this scene and speak to the Olivier, which,
wow.
full. And I just remember, goodness, Paul, the first time I did it, it was like jumping out of a plane or something. It was the exhilaration. It was amazing. I was on such a high. That first preview, just remember the scene finished and I turned out. And it was like being in a football stadium. Do you know what I mean? It felt like that. Like it felt so steep in that moment. And it felt just like the wall of people. And that was just the most thrilling thing. I mean, to this day, I love it. When you get the... I wonder how you feel about this. I imagine you'll feel...
It's funny. It's funny in a way, isn't it? Because that thing that Shakespeare sometimes does, where he puts something in the mouth of a character that feels quite peripheral sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think there's a kind of that sense when he leaves a character alone to address the audience when they're not necessarily the lead part. I think it's a really interesting dynamic moment.
I'm so with it. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's like we've just been doing Henry V. I always think the Williams speech,
yes,
for the battle is, which as in the text, he's in that one scene, and I think that's sort of, I've always thought that's the heart of the play. He says,
"You're right," and I felt it emotionally at the very end when finally Pistol is left alone, and he shares with the audience the news that his Nell is dead.
Yes, yeah.
And the kind of vulnerability of this braggart who's been full of bluster is slightly punctured for a beat. Obviously not forever, but with a
so, depending on leaks and other business.
Exactly. You mentioned Henry V, and we've just come off that together, and what a joy that was. And obviously, we've talked about this, but one of our big joys, was to, as fellow Villa fans, was to go during rehearsals and watch them play in the Rose and Crown pub in Stratford. I have to ask you, you said about your nervousness about being rejected. Is that why you turned down a trial with Villa, Alfie? You can say it publicly here if you want. Or we can keep that to ourselves. I won't go any further.
It's hard. It was when it means too much, Paul,
Of course.
I couldn't play with freedom, with the responsibility and the making a connection with the supporters, do all that good stuff that Unai requires, I thought.
Of course, I understand that, but I had to touch on that. Anyway, Aston Villa is a big deal for you and I. And Alfie, it's been really lovely chatting, but I'd like to finish, if I may, with the way I always do, which is to ask my guests 7 random questions.
Correct.
Because of your love for Villa, all of your questions are Villa related. So I make no apology to any listeners who don't know who Aston Villa is, or indeed support any other team. So
quite right too.
But you could just say the first thing that comes into your head, Alfie. Here we go. Yuri Tielemans or John McGinn?
Oh, Yuri Tielemans. I feel so dirty saying that. That's all.
No, that's good. Oh. Now we're talking about food at Villa Park. Would it be a chicken balti pie or a lentil vegan pie?
Chicken balti pie.
This is a multiple choice. What did 1980s centre-half Chris Nichol infamously do? Punch a referee, chase a dog off the pitch, or score all 4 goals in a 2-2 draw with Leicester City?
It's amazing. I'm going to go with the 4 goals, if that's true.
You are absolutely correct.
That is incredible.
Would you play Hamlet or Villa win the double of Premier League and Champions League?
Oh, that's horrid. That is horrid.
You don't have to answer that one, Alfie.
Yeah, I'll keep my counsel on that one.
You can pass on that one.
I would not least because I'm not sure.
Would you have dinner with Unai Emery or lunch with William Shakespeare?
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic.
You can use your second pass if you wish.
No. I've had one. I can't be. I'm seeing he's been dead and buried in the earth for 400 years. Apparently, he doesn't have a head. So I'll go for Unai. I think he'll be better company.
Perfect answer. Now we come to Aston Villa celebrities. To choose between Tom Hanks or Prince William.
Tom Hanks.
Excellent. And finally, BAFTA nomination or score a goal at the Holt End.
Oh my God. Goal at the Holt End was what my heart went.
Remember, Alfie, it's only a nomination. It's only a nomination.
Yeah, well,
you haven't won
yeah.
a BAFTA.
If I never get one, I'll remember this conversation.
Alfie, thank you so much. And you and I'm sure, will touch base over the next few weeks as Villa continue their amazing European venture.
Here's to that, Paul. Here's to that.
Thanks, Alfie. Have a lovely day.
Yeah, you too, Paul. Cheers. Thanks for the time.
Take care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Dear listeners, if you've enjoyed this idiot podcast, please spread the word